Hey guys, today's video is going to be about how to do a proper check-in and check-out when you have an upcoming reservation for one of your cars on Turo. At the very minimum, to qualify for insurance coverage, you do have to have 6 photos of your car. So best practices, and this is I'm talking about bare minimum, is to have a photo of the front of the car, the back of the car, both sides of the car, a picture of your dash, and a photo of the interior. I mean, that is the absolute bare minimum. I don't recommend it. Just to give you an idea, I take at least 30 photos per check-in and check-out, if not more. So the more photos you have, it's always better documentation in case you ever run into an issue. The last thing you want to happen is, you run into an issue during your rental, your car comes back with some sort of damage, you go to file a claim, and Turo comes back to you and says, hey, you didn't have proper documentation during your pre-trip photos, so your claim is not going to be covered, because that will happen. So best practice is to take as many detailed photos as you can. And then the other thing that I've learned is, once you start renting out your cars, you really start to learn the pain points of every car. For example, my Corvettes, I know for sure that the main thing that people run into issues with on that car is the right hand side always ends up with curb rash on the rims, which qualifies for damage, and then also the front right hand side of the bumper is usually the side that always runs into trouble for whatever reason on that car. It's something that I've consistently seen. So whenever I have a Corvette rental, I always make sure to take extra photos of those areas, because I know that that's where people run into issues. So you'll start to learn your cars. So I'm gonna do a quick walk around of one of my cars, and I'll show you how I take photos and sort of the degree of detail that I go into per rental. And taking photos is really quick, so you always want to make sure that you take the time to really grab as many photos as you can, pre-trip and post-trip. A lot of times what happens is during checkout, maybe you're rushed or maybe it's dark outside, so you don't catch the damage right away. But if you take all the photos and you get into that routine, and you can always go back and look at your photos once you get home or while you're uploading them, you'll notice damage, and you just want to make sure that you had those photos so that you can file that claim and you can get it repaired or get paid out, compensated for that damage. So here's my walk around, and these are the photos that I take. All right, I begin with the front of the car. I'm going to get the front bumper, and I actually try to get the bottom of the front bumper as well, because that does tend to get scraped, I think, almost in any car. And you also want to get the windshield in case there's any cracks when the renter gets back. If a rock hits the windshield or anything like that, it is actually covered through insurance. And as I mentioned earlier, curb rash is a very, very common form of damage that I experience in almost all my cars. So I always like to get up close to my rims and get a really good shot. Then I kind of pan out, get the sides of my car, just like that, and get an up close of my tire and rim right here. And just to show you, that was already about 6 photos just on one side of the car. Now I'm gonna get the interior as well while I'm at it on this side. This is also really good documentation for how clean your car is, in case your car comes back thrashed, so you can show Turo, they can see like, oh, you handed off your car and it was really clean and it was not returned in that same condition, and you can file for a cleaning fee if need be. So I'm getting my interior shots. I'm gonna go to the back of my car. I always like to get the sides as well, so you have every angle that you could possibly need. Getting the back of the car, and again, try to get the bottom of that as well. I'm going to repeat the same thing on this side. There it is. Sides. You want to grab interior from both sides of the car. That's always best practice. And it's really quick, so you really just want to take the time to do this so that it's detailed. Another thing that I like to do is on some of my cars, like my Corvettes, which I know people like to drive fast, is I like to document my tire thread, just in case anyone is doing burnouts and my tires come back bald and in really terrible condition than how it was handed off. So I'll just get really close to the tires and get a good photo and kind of document tire condition as well. And finally, to wrap up your photos, you want to get a clear photo of your dash so you can document gas and mileage. I'm going to do that right now. And of course, best practice is to always hand off your car with a full tank of gas. It makes accounting really easy. Just turn your car on, grab your dash. And finally, the last photo that I like to take is of my actual key. Because believe it or not, I had a rental where the guy's dog ate my key. So I do like to document the condition of my key as well. And that's it. That's all it takes to have proper, really good documentation of your car. And I guarantee you, if you take these photos, any claim that you have will be covered because you're really getting 360 photos of your car, inside and out, so you have great documentation, and you don't have to worry if anything happens on your rental because you know it's covered. But remember, at the very minimum, you have to have 6 photos to be covered through insurance, and best practice for me is I like to take 30 to 40 photos per rental, and that's per check-in and check-out. Another thing that I wanted to mention why photos are so important is because say if, when the car comes back to you at checkout, it's dark outside, or you're in a rush, or you're at an airport because you did a delivery, you want to get really great photos because sometimes you don't catch that damage right away until you get home and you're uploading the photos, or you're looking at your car and you realize, oh shoot, that there was some damage. So you want to take those photos in great detail because